Hello and welcome to Fun with Physics. I'm Mr. Spencieri, and this is the second lecture on a series of lectures entitled Electricity and Magnetism. Today we'll discuss how charge is created and transferred to other objects. Let us recall the law of electric charges. Remember that opposite electric charges attract each other, similar electric charges repel each other, and charged objects attract some neutral objects. The first way that we can charge objects is by putting two different objects in contact. If they're rubbed together, electrons are transferred from one object to another. Depending on their affinity for electrons, the electrons will always jump to one object over another. In the box here, we have a list of objects that, when rubbed together, have less or more affinity for their electrons. The objects on the right side of this box are more electron loving, and so they will gain electrons if rubbed with an object on the left side of this table. Another way objects can be charged is by contacting a neutral object with a charged object. What happens in this situation is the charged object transfers part of its charge over to the neutral object until the electrons are equally dispersed. When a positive charged object comes into contact with a neutral object, electrons are transferred from the neutral object to the positive object until the charge difference is equal. When contact is no longer, both objects are slightly positively charged, but have shared the original charge of this object. Same thing happens with a negatively charged object. However, when they come into contact with a neutral object, electrons are transferred from the negative charged object, to the neutral object. Another method of charging is known as charging by induction. This does not require the contact of two objects. However, it does require that one of the two objects is charged. The other object must be a conductor of electricity. Induced charge separation occurs when the charged object is brought close but does not come in contact to the electric conductor. When the object is positively charged, what occurs in the conductor is a separation of charge. The electrons move closer to the positively charged object because of their attraction to it, and therefore it is partially charged above as a negative, at the top negatively, and at the bottom positively. The opposite is true if the charged object is negatively charged. The opposite is true if the charged object is negatively charged. Although objects here are not overall charged, there is a way of getting while the charge separation is occurring. If the neutral object is connected to a ground wire, the partial charge that is produced on one side of the object can be neutralized by the ground. For example, when a negatively charged object is brought close to the top of this neutral object and a ground is connected, electrons are transferred from the ground to the neutral object to neutralize this partial charge. When the ground is removed, and so is the negatively charged influence, this object remains overall negatively charged. Similarly, with a positive charge, electrons are attracted to it, to that area, and if the ground is connected to the top, electrons are discharged from this neutral object to the ground to neutralize this partial charge. Once again, once the positive charge influence is removed and the ground is removed, we are left with a positively charged object. So to recap, there are three ways that we can transfer charge or create charge on objects: charging by friction, charging by contact, and charging by induction. In charging by friction, two objects are rubbed together, and so contact is therefore needed. Opposite charged objects are what result from this. Charging by contact, we do have contact as well, but similarly charged objects are created. And finally, charging by induction does not need any contact and produces similarly charged objects.